The clock above the counter ticked past 10 as Mara Lewis wiped the counter of the small convenience store for the last time that night. Her back ached, her eyes burned, but the thought of finally going home gave her a sliver of comfort. The store was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerators and the faint drip of coffee from the pot she'd just turned off. Outside, the parking lot was empty, bathed in the pale glow of a flickering streetlight. She breathed out slowly, feeling the day's weight slip from her shoulders. It had been another long shift filled with restless customers, spilled drinks, and forced smiles. Yet, despite the exhaustion, she didn't complain. Work meant rent paid, her mother's medicine bought, and food on the table. As she began counting the money in the register, her phone buzzed with a text from her mother, "Don't stay too late, sweetheart." A tired smile tugged at Mara's lips as she replied, "Almost done. Be home soon." She was about to grab her keys when the sound of crunching gravel outside made her pause. Through the glass door, she saw 3 figures approaching, their shadows stretching long under the flickering light. A chill ran through her spine. The sign clearly read, "Closed," but the bell above the door jingled anyway as they stepped inside. The tallest man, dressed in a black leather jacket, scanned the room with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. His friends followed close behind, laughing quietly in a way that made the air feel heavier. "Sorry, fellas," Mara said, forcing politeness into her trembling voice, "we're closed for the night." The man's grin widened as he stepped closer, his boots thudding softly against the floor. "We're not here to buy," he murmured, and his tone made her stomach twist. The others fanned out, one leaning on a shelf, another drifting toward the exit, blocking it. Her fingers tightened around the counter's edge as fear began to crawl up her throat. She thought about her mother waiting at home, about how quiet the world outside had seemed just moments ago. Now, it felt like the air itself was watching, waiting. And somewhere in the back of the store, unseen by all of them, something stirred, a sound so faint it could have been mistaken for nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Not tonight. The sound came again, a soft, deliberate thud from the back of the store. Mara's breath caught in her throat as the 3 men turned their heads toward the aisles, their laughter faltering. The tall one, Kyle, narrowed his eyes, his smirk fading just slightly. "What was that?" he muttered. The man in the red flannel shrugged, though his body tensed. "Probably just the ice machine," he said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. Mara stood frozen behind the counter, her mind racing. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but her legs felt rooted to the floor. She wanted to reach for her phone, but it lay just inches from where Kyle had leaned earlier, too far, too risky. "You sure you're alone here?" Kyle asked suddenly, his tone turning sharp as he stepped closer. Mara's lips parted, but no words came. The lights above flickered once, the buzzing hum of the refrigerators filling the heavy silence. "I said," Kyle began, but he was cut off by another sound, a slow, steady footstep echoing from the back aisle. Then another. The red flannel man straightened, his head snapping toward the noise. The third man, near the exit, shifted uneasily. "Who's there?" Kyle barked, trying to sound confident, but a hint of tremor crept into his voice. From the dimly lit aisle, 3 shadows emerged, broad-shouldered, steady, unhurried. The first figure stepped into the light, revealing a man in his late 40s with a thick salt and pepper beard, tattoos snaking down his muscular arms, and a black leather vest bearing the emblem Hell's Angels. His eyes were calm but carried a weight that made the air seem to tighten. 2 more men followed, one bald with a dark beard and another younger, wearing sunglasses even under the harsh store lights. The 3 stopped a few steps away, their presence filling the small space like a quiet storm. Kyle's hand twitched at his side, trying to mask his sudden unease. "You might want to let go of that attitude," the older biker said, his tone low and controlled. Kyle scoffed, forcing a shaky grin. "And who the hell are you supposed to be?" The biker didn't answer. He just took a slow step forward, the sound of his boots echoing like a warning. "Someone you really don't want to test," he said softly. And in that moment, the store's silence cracked open, just before chaos would follow. The moment hung suspended in the air, thick with dread and defiance. Kyle's smirk twitched as he took a step toward the older biker, his false bravado barely holding against the man's quiet, unshakable stare. "You think you scare me?" he sneered, his voice cracking slightly. The biker didn't respond with words, he didn't need to. In one fluid motion, he caught Kyle's wrist mid-swing, twisted it sharply, and the sound of a muffled crack cut through the silence. Kyle's knees buckled, his cry echoing off the cold tile as he dropped to the floor, clutching his arm. Before the other two thugs could react, the bald biker moved. He was fast, faster than a man his size should be. His hand shot out, grabbing the one in the red flannel by the collar, and with a single shove, slammed him against the counter hard enough to rattle the candy racks. "You done?" he asked, his tone calm, almost amused. The thug's breath came out in a pained wheeze, his fight dissolving instantly. The third man, standing by the door, froze completely. His wide eyes darted between his fallen friends and the bikers, panic flooding his face. "Nope," he muttered and bolted, the bell above the door chiming wildly as he disappeared into the night. The other two stumbled after him moments later, their courage gone. The store fell silent again, except for the faint hum of the coolers and the soft, shaky breaths coming from Mara. She stood motionless behind the counter, one hand clutching her torn shirt, the other gripping the counter for balance. Her heart pounded in her chest, but for the first time since they'd entered, it wasn't from fear, it was from disbelief. The older biker turned to her slowly, his rough expression softening. "You okay, miss?" he asked gently. She nodded, unable to find her voice. He gave a small, reassuring smile. "Keep your lights on for a bit. You're not as alone as you think." His words, simple yet steady, wrapped around her like a blanket. Then, with quiet purpose, the three men turned and walked toward the door. Their reflections shimmered in the glass as they stepped outside, the low rumble of their motorcycles following seconds later. Mara stood frozen, tears finally slipping down her cheeks, not from terror, but from relief. Heroes, she realized, don't always wear badges or capes. Sometimes, they wear leather and walk out of the shadows when the world turns dark. The roar of the motorcycles faded into the night, leaving behind a stillness that felt almost sacred. Mara stood alone in the store, her reflection trembling faintly in the glass of the door. Her heartbeat slowed, her chest rising and falling with uneven breaths as the adrenaline drained from her body. The cool hum of the refrigerators returned, grounding her in the quiet aftermath of chaos. She looked around at the scattered candy bars, the overturned chair, and the faint scuff marks on the floor, evidence of what had just unfolded. Slowly, she bent down, gathering the mess with trembling hands, the broom scraping softly against the tiles. The silence felt heavy but peaceful, like the calm after a storm. She caught sight of the half-empty coffee cups on the table near the back, the ones the bikers had left behind, and a small, shaky smile touched her lips. Those cups were proof that she hadn't truly been alone, that something greater had been watching over her, even when fear had made her feel invisible. Her phone buzzed on the counter, making her flinch. It was a message from her mother, "Sweetheart, are you okay? You're late." Tears welled in Mara's eyes as she typed back, "I'm fine, Mom. Just had a long night. I'll be home soon." Setting the phone down, she turned off the coffee machine and walked to the door. The parking lot outside was quiet, the flickering streetlight casting long silver streaks across the pavement. For a long moment, she just stood there, breathing in the cold night air. Somewhere far away, faint but unmistakable, she heard the deep rumble of motorcycle engines, steady, fading slowly into the horizon. A smile broke through her tears. "Thank you," she whispered softly into the darkness, her voice trembling but sincere. When she finally locked up and stepped into her car, a strange calmness washed over her. She realized that kindness doesn't always come in the form you expect. Sometimes it walks in wearing leather, covered in tattoos, carrying the kind of quiet strength that doesn't need words. As she drove home, the town lights glowing in the distance, Mara thought of her mother's favorite saying, "You never know who walks into your life, some to hurt you, some to save you." Tonight, she believed it more than ever. Because angels, she now knew, didn't always have wings, sometimes, they rode motorcycles.